Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be able to join you virtually today. I look forward to the Talk to the Hill event every single year. I want to begin by thanking you for your advocacy, thanking you for all that you do to protect legal services. Your passion and commitment to helping our most vulnerable neighbors continues to inspire me. Whether it's families seeking public assistance, tenants facing eviction, survivors of domestic violence, seniors who are scammed, or support for immigrants and the unemployed. We are so grateful to the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation and the Equal Justice Coalition for your advocacy around legal aid and the communities that benefit from it every day. You've demonstrated that your services have become even more critical throughout this pandemic, as we've seen it disproportionately threaten the well-being and livelihood of low-income residents and people of color. That's why we need legal aid to be strong, not only to handle the uptick of casework that we've seen, but also to help us address systemic problems, level the playing field, and secure access to justice for everyone who needs it. And now, as governor, I look forward to continuing this partnership to make sure that every Massachusetts resident has access to the legal representation they deserve and to make our state more just and equal for all. Thank you for all that you do.
Good morning. On behalf of the Equal Justice Coalition, welcome to the Talk to the Hill for Civil Legal Aid. This is the 24th year in which lawyers from all over the Commonwealth have come together with state representatives, state senators, and legislative and executive decision makers. And we're here today to do the one thing that we all know lawyers know how to do: talk. We're here to talk with our elected officials about the importance of civil legal aid. You know, as lawyers, what a huge difference a lawyer can make. But you also know that while there is a right to an attorney in criminal cases, there is no right to counsel in civil proceedings. And you also know that what we call civil proceedings are very often life-changing events for people in crisis. Civil proceedings include housing and eviction cases, immigration and deportation cases, domestic abuse cases, unemployment benefits cases, and many others. And for our most vulnerable neighbors and friends, being involved in a civil legal proceeding often means being in crisis. It means being unable to pay medical bills, being denied benefits, being physically threatened, or being about to lose a home. Everybody in crisis who needs a lawyer should have a lawyer. Let me say that again. Everybody in crisis who needs a lawyer should have a lawyer. Nobody should have to face eviction notices, domestic abuse, housing court, deportation proceedings, or an unemployment hearing without a lawyer by their side. Everybody in crisis who needs a lawyer should have a lawyer. And that is where civil legal aid comes in. The Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation, MLAC, funds programs that provide civil legal aid for people at or below 125% of the federal poverty level. That is, those making less than $37,500 a year for a family of four. It is when our most economically vulnerable neighbors are in crisis that civil legal aid steps in with a lawyer to help. And thanks to you, the lawyers who have advocated for MLAC funding year after year, and thanks to your legislators who have made it a priority, legal aid programs across the Commonwealth have been able to help more eligible residents every year. Not long ago, in fact, the last time that we had our last in-person walk to the Hill, I told you that a staggering 57% of qualified legal aid recipients had to be turned away because of lack of funding. The legislature heard our call and increased funding year over year for the past several years. And as a result, that turnaway rate is now down to 47%. This is phenomenal work. More funding means more people being served. And yet, there remains a huge unmet need. Almost half of low-income residents in crisis and needing a lawyer are still turned away. That's why we're here today, to ask our representatives to continue their good work of increasing funding for civil legal aid each year so that the civil legal aid lawyers can continue their good work of helping our neighbors in crisis. That's why we're here, and that's what the Equal Justice Coalition is all about. Now, before we begin the program, I would like to take a brief moment to honor the former Senate President, Thomas F. Birmingham, who died just last Friday. The Equal Justice Coalition is a coalition in its truest sense. Our founding organizations, the Massachusetts Bar Association, the Boston Bar Association, and the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation, have worked together hand in hand in the fight for civil legal aid for the last quarter century. And so I'm delighted to introduce the leaders of two of our partner organizations, Grace Garcia, president of the Massachusetts Bar Association, and Chin Pham, president of the Boston Bar Association.
It's great to be with you for another virtual installment of the Talk to the Hill for Civil Legal Aid. Thank you once again to the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation and our partners in the Equal Justice Coalition for ensuring this important annual event continues even though the format has changed. As the last 2 years has demonstrated, our message of support for civil legal aid is just as powerful when we meet virtually as when we meet in the State House. Thanks in no small part to your advocacy at the 2022 Talk to the Hill, MLAC received its requested allotment of $41 million in the state budget signed into law last July. We owe a big debt of gratitude to our former governor, Charlie Baker, who consistently invested in legal services during his time in the office. The same is true of our elected officials in the House and Senate, where we have found a receptive audience to our calls for increased funding for civil legal aid. With that said, it is still incumbent that you all take the time to ask your legislators to support MLAC's $49 million budget request for fiscal year 2024. MLAC supplies the infrastructure that connects and supports the legal aid network across the Commonwealth. But even with yearly increases in legal aid funding, MLAC-sponsored organizations remain unable to serve nearly half of all individuals who qualify for assistance with life-altering legal challenges involving healthcare, family law and domestic violence, immigration, education, and other critical concerns. As lawyers, we know the vital role of legal representation in ensuring equitable outcomes for all court users, regardless of their economic status or their type of case. Without sufficient funding to meet the tremendous demand for legal aid, low-income people are left to navigate the court systems on their own, which threatens both the livelihood and right of access to justice. Obtaining additional funding for legal aid will improve access to justice by ensuring that legal aid organizations across the Commonwealth have the resources, training, and workforce to assist more low-income individuals and families in the Commonwealth. We have a shared responsibility as members of the bar to help make certain that legal assistance is always available to those who need it most. And today at Talk to the Hill, we can harness our collective spirit and influence to show the importance of this critical issue. That sense of community within our legal profession is one of the 3 themes of my presidency this year, along with communication and collaboration. Whether virtual or in person, this event continually shows the strength of our community and the strength of our voice as we advocate for civil legal services in the Commonwealth. Just as we give voice in court to for our clients, it is important that we use our platform here today and going forward to speak for those whose civil legal needs will remain unmet without additional funding. And when you talk to your legislators about the importance of civil legal aid, I encourage you to channel that same passion that you bring to zealously represent your clients and interest to your request for more legal funding. Lending our support to MLAC's annual campaign for civil legal aid funding is just one small way for us as attorneys to work towards a more just society here in Massachusetts. Please join me today with the MBA in championing equal access to an essential resource for our state's most vulnerable residents and families. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ching Pham, the president of the Boston Bar Association. I would like to start by extending a big thank you to the Equal Justice Coalition for your effective advocacy and for putting together another successful virtual Talk to the Hill. The BBA is proud to stand alongside the NBA and MLAC as one of the original members of the coalition and to support access to justice. Now, I'm sure you can all agree with me that the Massachusetts legal community is special. And from the outpouring of support and turnout that Talk to the Hill sees each year from lawyers, law students, advocates, and legal professionals across the state, it is clear that there's a deep commitment in our community and care for those who are vulnerable in the justice system. I would say that there are few other professions that can demonstrate such a broad commitment to volunteering services for others. And for many lawyers, we consider pro bono work to not only be important, but essential to our work as attorneys. At the BBA, our volunteers carry out thousands of hours of pro bono work each year in housing, immigration, and youth advocacy cases, among many others. And this work would not be possible without our MLAC-funded partner organizations, which are the backbone of civil legal aid in the Commonwealth. Now, we show up each year to Talk to the Hill because we know that funding for civil legal aid is funding that addresses critical issues in our community. And civil legal aid makes a significant difference in many people's lives, including some of the most vulnerable citizens of the Commonwealth. Many of us can agree that access to healthcare is one of those critical issues that was further highlighted by the pandemic. The BBA in particular has been especially focused on mental health and well-being among attorneys, and we know that under these tumultuous times, access to care is even more critical for vulnerable people. Civil legal aid funding also continues to be necessary when it comes to protecting individuals' access to services and rights under the law. As many of you have seen, the right to seek asylum has been under threat, and civil legal aid attorneys are stepping up to provide essential guidance to immigrants and asylum seekers. Pro bono attorneys likewise are helping clients navigate a complex immigration system where the odds have been stacked and the outcomes truly life-changing. My family, as some of you may know, immigrated to this country from Vietnam in 1975, and I know firsthand the challenges that immigrants can face, including a language barrier. Yeah, I'm proud to say that the BBA is part of the coalition of organizations pushing for equitable language access in state government, which ensures that diverse individuals can participate and help in making for a better democracy. And I'm proud to lead an organization of volunteers committed to diversity, equity, and service through civil legal aid. So please join me today in thanking our legislators for their past support, as well as asking them for their continued financial support. It really is vital to our most vulnerable citizens. And by showing up each year, the Equal Justice Coalition reminds legislators of the critical work attorneys can do with this funding to make positive change in the lives of our clients and in the Commonwealth at large. So whether it's your first time talking to the Hill or whether you've been attending this event since it began over 2 decades ago, thank you for joining us and leading the way toward access to justice for all.
Thank you, Chin and Grace, for your thoughtful words, and thank you to the BBA and the MBA for your incredible support. A highlight of the Walk to the Hill every year is hearing from some of our neighbors who found help from a civil legal aid organization to navigate through a time of crisis. Today, you're going to hear from Jim and Simi. I'll let them introduce themselves and tell their stories.
My name is Simi Daniels Dalio. I recently graduated from Wesleyan University in Connecticut. I came to the US some years back through a scholarship program. And while I was still at the program, my hometown in Nigeria got attacked by the terrorist group, and they got displaced. And I got scared and really not sure what was going to happen to me after the program, given that my family were displaced again. I decided to not go back. I'd say it was one of the hardest decisions I had to make, but I did because I didn't have a future there going back, and I just betted on myself to stay here. So I needed to establish some legal residency here, and a family friend helped me out in just a simple Google search. They connected me with the Children Law Center, and they immediately gave me an appointment to see them. And we spoke, and that was it. They just took my case and connected with some of the people there, and that has been it since then. And they helped me gain legal residency here in the US. Having access to organizations like the Children Law Center and lawyers like Jay, I'd say it's for many immigrant and youth, it's like a ticket to hope. When I'm really frustrated, I'm not really sure what's going to happen, and I'm scared, he really reassured me a lot and advocated, and he made sure like I was getting the right representation, and explains the process. I think that process of explaining and giving me that thorough deep dive into what's going on and my expectations, so that really helped a lot. So having those conversations with him was helpful. So he really kept me in the loop with that. I've moved from just having hope to me actualizing dreams that I never thought I would, accomplish in life. I want them to know that work has been done and lives have been changed through their work. It goes a long way to transform one's life, and they're doing an incredible job in giving people that opportunity.
I got a letter from the pandemic unemployment insurance saying that I had to repay everything that I had been given on a weekly basis. And this was, I believe, something like $36,000 back. And I was shocked, say the least. That's an awful lot of money. The money had been spent on bills, and it's a lot to pay back, and couldn't quite figure out why I had to pay it back. I'm in the home remodeling business, specializing in bathroom remodeling. And to be in somebody's house 8 hours a day with a mask on, not particularly knowing their situation medically, as kids are still going to school and stuff like that, I certainly had a lot of risk in being in that situation. And plus, on top of everything else, people didn't want me in their house for 3 weeks. I mean, they were as concerned as I was. So I stopped, working as a result of those situations, both customers being nervous about me coming into their house for that length of time, as well as myself being nervous about putting me in risky situations. So I contacted legal aid, and I got a call from one of their attorneys, Vera, and walked her through what had taken place. And she asked me a lot of questions about what I did for a living and the circumstances that caused me not to work during the pandemic. And Vera talked me through and gave me advice as to what to say. Few weeks after that, I got the relief that my appeal had been accepted and they weren't going to seek refund of the money that I had received, that my claim was actually valid. When I contacted legal aid and found out that they were willing to work with me on this case, I was relieved tremendously that I wasn't alone, that there was somebody that I could talk to and give me some guidance So it meant significant difference to my emotional and financial health.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for Talk to the Hill. Thank you to the advocates and staff who work at civil legal aid organizations across the Commonwealth. Thank you for your tireless commitment and dedication to serving those in need of civil legal aid. And thank you to the many private bar attorneys who contribute hundreds of pro bono hours each year to legal aid organizations and their clients. And thank you to Simi and Jim, who graciously have come forward to share their stories with us today about the meaningful impact that legal aid has had on their lives. Civil legal aid organizations provide an important and essential service to our state's most vulnerable residents, many of whom are still acutely feeling the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Legal aid organizations assist low-income residents who face a wide range of serious legal problems that impact their most basic needs. People and families with incomes at or below 125% of the poverty level, that's $37,500 per year for a family of 4, qualify for civil legal aid. Since the COVID-19 pandemic began, we've seen that the demand for legal assistance has particularly increased in a number of notable areas. Unemployment cases, evictions, domestic violence, and immigration cases are all on the rise. We know that the pandemic continues to have a lasting effect on people with low incomes. We also know that people of color have been disproportionately harmed and continue to suffer greater health and economic consequences. We've been fortunate to receive increases in funding for legal aid over the past several years. These increases have enabled legal aid organizations to reduce the number of eligible people who are turned away. As a result of the funding increases, the turnaway rate of those who qualify to receive legal aid decreased to 47% last year, a more than 10% reduction from just a few years ago. That's a significant reduction. It clearly demonstrates that increased funding is having a meaningful impact. Nonetheless, many eligible individuals and families are still being turned away. Legal aid organizations must still make very difficult choices about whom they can help and whom they cannot due to limited resources. And that's why increased funding this year is still so important. The legal aid organizations that MLAC funds work closely together. They collaborate and they gain from each other's expertise. The network of legal services providers in Massachusetts is a vital and necessary part of the Commonwealth's social safety net. Increased funding is needed to support these highly capable legal aid organizations. Significant salary disparities exist in legal aid compared to other legal and public sector jobs, and this is becoming an ever more serious problem as legal aid organizations struggle to keep up. Increased funding is needed to continue to recruit and retain a skilled and diverse staff, and so that the legal aid workforce can reflect the communities they serve. Investing in legal aid is a wise investment. In FY22, legal aid organizations funded by MLAC secured over $126 million in estimated benefits for the Commonwealth and its residents. So please support our request for $49 million in FY24. With your help and the help of all those who participate and Talk to the Hill today, we can continue to make equal access to justice a reality for all. And now I am so honored to introduce Supreme Judicial Court Chief Justice Kimberly Budd. Thank you for joining us this morning, Chief Justice Budd, and thank you for your outstanding leadership. We are delighted to have you with us and appreciate your strong commitment to pursuing equal access to justice for all.
Good morning. Thank you so much to all of you who are joining us today for this year's Talk to the Hill, and to everyone who helped prepare for this event. It's always inspiring to see so many leaders from across the legal community coming together to advocate for people who cannot afford counsel for their essential civil legal needs. Our legal system is dedicated to the principle of providing equal justice for all. But too often we fall short of that ideal because many people still lack the resources that they need to present their cases in the courts. And our legal aid organizations who work tirelessly simply do not have enough funding to provide counsel for everyone who comes to them seeking help. In recent years, we've made significant progress in closing this justice gap. Thanks to the leadership of the legislature, appropriations for civil legal aid have grown substantially. And as a result, the percentage of eligible persons who must be turned away by legal aid organizations has dropped considerably, from 57% to 47%. But still, that means that nearly half the people who seek assistance do not get it. Meanwhile, the need for legal aid continues to grow. For example, over the last 3 fiscal years, civil legal aid cases involving unemployment insurance have quadrupled as compared with pre-pandemic figures. And cases involving domestic violence, housing, and immigration have all grown by 20% or more. The need is clear. Support for legal aid is also important because it helps to maintain confidence in the fairness of our legal system. Unfortunately, that confidence has been ebbing. A recent nationwide poll by the National Center for State Courts found that nearly half of all respondents questioned whether state courts deliver equal justice for all. The responses from people of color were particularly concerning. Approximately 60% of Black and Hispanic respondents said that the phrase provides equal justice for all does not describe state courts. There are undoubtedly many complex factors that contribute to this perception of unfairness. But one concrete step that we can take to reassure litigants that they have access to the equal justice is to increase the availability of counsel for people who cannot afford a lawyer. Less than 2 weeks ago, Massachusetts leaders gathered on Boston Common to dedicate the Embrace, a sculpture commemorating the lives of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. This memorial celebrates what Coretta Scott King called the unconditional love for all of humankind that impels people to go into the community and try to change conditions for others. It reminds us of the King's fundamental message that we are all interconnected by our common humanity. As Dr. King wrote in his letter from a Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So in that spirit, when you speak to your legislators today, remind them that funding for civil legal aid isn't just another appropriation. It is a fundamental step toward realizing the foundational promise of our legal system for everyone, that we will provide equal justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice Budd, for your extraordinary service to our Commonwealth and for your powerful remarks here today. I'm now delighted to introduce the Executive Director of Greater Boston Legal Services, Jacqueline Bowman.
I want to add my thanks to you attending our virtual walk to the Hill. We certainly thought that we would be able to be in person this year, but these strange times continue. Among many of the benefits of a virtual walk is that there are no worries about January weather or hybrid work. But seriously, our goal is the same. We want legislators to know that all lawyers care about access to justice. Legal aid makes a difference in the lives of our clients in assuring that access. That much has been clearly demonstrated by the challenges exposed by the pandemic, whether it's to help accessing healthcare, obtaining benefits to meet basic needs such as the child tax credit or unemployment benefits, or to help prevent eviction or protection from violence. Many people are in difficult financial situations due to the pandemic, or their health status means that they continue to be at higher risk. People are suffering from the impact of higher prices for food or rent and are forced to make difficult decisions. Our office has experienced a significant increase in cases and requests for assistance. This is the same across the Commonwealth. More people are eligible for our services. For example, in the last year across the Commonwealth, we saw an increase of 320% in the number of people needing legal assistance in unemployment cases, and a 40% increase in the number of people needing protection in domestic violence cases. I could go on, but I know that people are hurting and that many of our most vulnerable neighbors who struggled before the pandemic are even at greater risk today. We need increased funding to tackle this dire situation. Many of you helped us do it last year, and we really need you this year. As you've heard, we will go to the breakout rooms where you will be joined by your other constituents. Make sure that you have your fact sheets for the campaign. They are on the website, or you should have received them by email. Basically, we're asking you to support the fiscal year 24 request, which is for $49 million. Talk about why you personally care about funding for legal aid. You can also talk about the difficulty in navigating the virtual world these days. It's difficult for many of us, but impossible if you have limited access to technology. Having an advocate makes all the difference in gaining access to justice and fairness. State what you know about the need. We are also using Twitter hashtags again this year. It's hashtag #ITalkForJustice. Let the world know you're virtually at the Hill today to support increased funding for civil legal aid. You should also have a document with talking points. Basically, you're introducing yourself as a constituent and that you're an attorney. State that civil legal aid is important to you and thank your legislator for his or her past support. Urge your legislator to request $49 million in funding for the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation, or MLAC, in fiscal year 24. Ask your legislator to make this funding request one of his or her top 3 budget priorities. This is the substance of what you should be saying during your lobbying visits, which in a nutshell is, please support increased funding for legal aid. Each breakout room will have a moderator who will facilitate the session and track any substantive issues raised. Don't feel like you have to respond to the questions. Just say that someone will get back to them. I want to reiterate, the purpose of this event is to meet with your legislators. I strongly encourage you all to stay and participate in the breakout sessions. Please don't be discouraged if your conversation today is with an aide rather than the legislator himself or herself. It is just as effective to talk with an aide, and your participation today will not be diminished if you do not have the opportunity to speak directly to your legislator. Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jackie. Well, folks, that's it. The legislative visits are now open. It's time to go and time to talk. When you see your legislators, I ask you to please remind them that everybody in crisis who needs a lawyer should have a lawyer. Now is the time to click on the picture of your senator down below. Thank you in advance for your advocacy, and good luck.